Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Classic Gamer 74. I am your host, Anthony Gamer, and in today's episode, we're going to be discussing pool games. The game of pool, or its different varieties, have been around for hundreds of years, centuries even, and it's been very popular in many places, such as pool halls, bingo halls, people's homes. Growing up, we had a pool table in my home, and I really enjoyed playing pool. Not really that good at it, but it does. Just because you're not good at something doesn't mean you can't enjoy playing it. And I enjoy playing real pool, mostly 8-ball, of course, in real life and in video games. So, without further ado, let's get into some great pool games. And our first game for today is Pocket Billiards for the Magnavox Odyssey 2. This was released in 1980. In this game, you play 8-ball or rotation on an authentic computerized replica of a full-size pool table. Your electronic cue can rotate a full 360 degrees to play the ball at any angle. You have full control to make a cannonball break shot that gives your opponent no break at all, or a delicate tap that sinks the ball into the corner pocket. Automatic racking, computerized scoring, full sync sound action, 2 players. Honestly, I'm so impressed with how well this game comes off and the programming itself for the game, considering the low amount of memory that was available for the Magnavox Odyssey 2. Very nice. And next up, we have the very first pool video game I ever played, and that is Trick Shot for the Atari 2600 from Imagic. Now, there's a couple different variations of pool for this game. The first one is called Trick Shot, where you're basically trying to land as many of the balls in the pockets as you can. You're basically playing for points. So let's check out a couple of the other variations. Then you have Basic Pool, where you're basically trying to sink the balls. You can play with an opponent, and the first person to score 25 points is the winner. And the next variation is English Billiards. Now in this one, you and an opponent each have a cue ball, and you're trying to sink the red ball. At the same time, you can also sink your opponent's ball, and there's all kinds of ways to score points on this game, and it can get really fun and very competitive. It's really a lot of fun. I had never played it until recently, and I suspect I'm going to be playing this game with a certain line friend of mine sometime soon. But first person to 50 points is the winner. So if you haven't tried this variation, I highly recommend it. As technology would improve and as the amount of memory available to games would improve, pool games themselves would improve greatly to the point where you would actually be able to play games like 8-ball and other varieties successfully. So let's check out some other pool games. Next up, we have a very interesting game with a really interesting history, and that is Deep Pocket Super Pool and Billiards for the Intellivision. Now, this was originally supposed to be released, I believe, in 1990, but as many of you know, by about that time, Intellivision was kind of becoming a thing of the past, and there were some games that never quite got released. However, eventually it did get released, and that was released by Intellivision Productions in 1997. Now, this game was way ahead of its time, even for 1990. The graphics are just amazing. You have a couple different options, 1 to 2 players. 9 different ways, I believe, total. Now, I want to let you guys know that alongside Trick Shot, you see some flicker on the screen. Believe me, the game itself does not have that flicker. That is just, something from it being recorded. So if you're thinking about purchasing any of the games today and you see some flicker, don't worry. It's just the camera. It is not like that when you play the actual game, just to let you know. Next up, we have Video Hustler for the ColecoVision. It was set to be released in 1984. Unfortunately, it wasn't released. I believe it was eventually by somebody, or at least the prototype is readily available online. Honestly, this is a great game, and it's actually based on an arcade game of the same name. Way ahead of its time, and it's a shame that it didn't get released, as this was probably one of the best pool games from that time period. If you get a chance to grab a hold of the prototype, I recommend it. You're going to have lots of fun with it. All right, and next up, you have 3D Pool for the Amstrad CPC. Now, this is actually snooker, which is a much more popular game in the United Kingdom and in Europe than it is on this side of the pond. Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen anyone play snooker in my life, except when I was watching some stuff on BBC. But anyway, so honestly, for its time, the graphics are great. I love the way you rotate the table and stuff. It's just really nice for its time. Amstrad CPC continues to mystify me with how great some of the graphics and the games are for this computer. Next up, you have Pool. Yep, Pool for the Atari 8 computer. Nothing really special. Use the mouse to play this. You can tell whose balls are whose because they have different colors and which is the 8 ball. I think there's a lot more balls out there than there should be. I don't know. But overall, it's not a bad game. I'm not sure if this was made by an individual or if this was mass-produced, but nice job overall, especially for its time. And next up, we have this interesting pool game called Angle Ball for the ZX Spectrum. You're playing on a 6-sided pool table. I think in this one, you're just trying to knock the balls in. I think you get a different point for putting them in order. Pretty cool game, actually. Another one of those lost classics, probably, for the ZX Spectrum. If you happen to be in the UK, give this game a try. If you have a working ZX Spectrum, and if you're here on this side of the pond, check it out with your emulator. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. All right, and next up for the Commodore 64, we have Snooker Pool. Again, this is obviously a game that was probably released in the UK, as the C64 was big, not just here in the United States, but also in the United Kingdom, as the great Kim Justice and other UK-based YouTubers do discuss it quite a bit. This is your basic snooker game. The graphics are pretty simple, as they would be, but honestly, like all C64 games, it's just got its own charm that you can't duplicate on any other computer. Okay, let's go to the arcade for a while. And the next one we have is Cool Pool. This was released in 1992 by Catalina Games. Not bad. It's pretty much billed as a virtual reality game of billiards. You have 3 selectable types of background music: jazz, rock, and fusion. You have 4 different types of pool: straight pool, 8-ball, 9-ball, and strip pool. The strip pool game contains adult-related material and is not intended... Okay, I'm not going to show that. But anyway, not a bad game for its time. Sometimes you get a little bit of a warble in the sound, but overall the game is just really a lot of fun. So if you get a chance and you got MAME, check it out. Alright, next up we have another arcade classic, and that is Gimme a Break Pool. This was released in 1985 by Bally, and like the previous game, you actually use a trackball to play this one. As pretty as it is, and it is quite nice for its time, this one may be one you want to skip. Honestly, I think it probably works a lot better if you play it with a real trackball, because it doesn't really seem to respond too well just using playing it on MAME. But you know, if any of you played this on a real arcade machine, let me know what it's like. I'd really like to hear what you have to say. And finally, we're back in the 8-bit era, and this game is called Side Pocket. It was released in 1987 by Data East. Chalk up your cue stick and rack up those balls. Now get ready, get set, break. The balls scatter and the match is on. It's the Data East Pool Tournament Finals, and you're behind the 8-ball. It'll take a steady hand and a sharp eye to hustle your way to the top. Challenge your friends to the ultimate game of skill, but you've got to stay cool. It's a green felt jungle out there. Really awesome game, as you would expect for the NES. Unfortunately, I didn't have this as a kid. I really would have liked to have had it, but I've had a lot of fun playing it now, so if you have an NES, grab this game if you can find it. Next, we have a Japanese exclusive, and that is Champion Billiards. This was released in 1986 for the Sega SG-1000. So, of course, it wasn't released anywhere except in Japan. This game itself is not really an accurate representation of the game. It's basically a level-based physics game. Your goal is to use the red cue ball to sink the other balls. Interesting note: if you breaking open the yellow ball, it can release that Sega character of Flicky. So, yeah, not the greatest game of all, not the most realistic pool game, but yet still fun. And our next game is Lunar Pool. It was actually made by the same company that made the last game, that being Compile. This came out in 1985 for the NES. Lunar Pool is the first advanced home video billiards game ever. Never before has the player been able to choose among 60 different tables, jump around to your favorite, or master each stage consecutively. Your score is kept automatically. You set up the electronic cue stick, aim the cue ball, choose the power you need, and shoot. Then watch the ball ricochet around the table and land in the pocket. Learn to be a hustler by mastering all 60 stages. Really unique game and really an addictive one. Honestly, this game really does say 8-bit NES. Alright, and next up we have Break Time, the National Pool Tour. This was released in 1992 for the NES. Kind of a late release by a company called Opera House and published by FCI. Okay, the National Pool Tour is a pocket billiards pool video game released for the Nintendo Entertainment System. There are 4 unique challenges in the game: 8-ball, 9-ball, rotation, and straight pool. All 4 are allegedly played according to the professional world standardized rules. Not a bad game, kind of a quest game, I guess you could say, in pool. Really enjoyed it. As this is a late release for the NES, I got a feeling this game is probably a little on the valuable side, so... Alright, let's check out a Flash game. And here we have Quickfire Pool 8-Ball. Yep. These Adobe Flash games, of course, are kind of hard to find nowadays, but luckily a lot of them are being preserved. Thank you to the people that are taking the time and working hard to preserve these games. It's just a basic pool game, except in this one, you're trying to land as many of the balls as you can before time runs out. So, like most Flash games, it's fun, it's simple, and it's a Flash game, so you gotta love it. Alright, now we move into the 16-bit era, and our next game is Championship Pool. This was released in 1993 by Mindscape for the Super NES. Now, this game is pretty cool. You have several different options for games available to you. The graphics are beautiful. Controls are smooth. Definitely a great game for the Super NES. Give it a try. And our next game is for the Sega Genesis, and that is Minnesota Fats Pool Legend. It was released in 1995 by Data East. Minnesota Fats Pool Legend is a pool game where the player can participate in a story mode and play against a set of pros in 6 different pool halls in an attempt to face off against Minnesota Fats himself. There are 7 different variations of pool to play: 8-ball, 9-ball, rotation, 14-to-1 rack, 3-ball, cutthroat, and 1 pocket. There is also a versus mode to let players take on any opponent of their choice, including a 2-player option to take on a friend in a tournament mode. Players can also try out the trick mode that has the player try to compete 16 different trick shots. Really a fun game, and just has that beauty that the Sega Genesis, only the Sega Genesis had. So get a chance to try this one. I highly recommend it. And now we are in the world of the PS1, and our first game for today is Carom Shot. Now, this was released in 1997 by Argent, and unfortunately this was only made in Japan. It's really a cool game where you have different variations of pool to play. You can play against opponents, computer opponents. There's a story mode, and most of the game is actually in English, surprisingly. Really a cool game. The graphics are just great. The controls are fluid. Really a lot of fun. It's just a shame it wasn't released here in America. And our final game for today is Backstreet Billiards. This was also released for the PS1 in 1998, and it is actually the sequel to our last game. This, however, was released worldwide. It pretty much follows the same format as Carom Pool. The only difference is that the controls are slightly different, and you don't have that line that you had in the previous one to kind of approximate where your shots are going to go and all that. It has a story mode, several different options. It's a really cool game, honestly. Probably the most realistic pool game up to that point. Now, I was going to show you guys this really cool one for the PS4. It's a VR pool game, but for some reason it won't let me show you the game footage. I don't know why. There's a couple games like that for PS4, and I don't quite understand. You pay for the game, you should be allowed to record game footage. That's what I think. But anyway. In our next episode, we're going to continue to discuss some great games from the Kunio-kun series, and that is my favorite, at least one of my top 10 favorite NES games of all time, River City Ransom. Well, that brings this episode of Classic Gamer 74 to a close. I really hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you for staying to the end of the video. It really helps this channel, so thank you so much. If you did enjoy today's video, let me know by giving me a big thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to click that little bell icon down there so you'll be notified when I upload any new videos. Connect with me on all my social media platforms, and please check out my Patreon page. We've got some big plans for this channel, and we can only do it with your help. You'll get access to some cool videos you won't find anywhere else, along with some other cool treats. So please be generous and help us out on Patreon. The link is in the description below. Well, until next time, this is Anthony Gamer. Have yourselves a great week, a great Thanksgiving, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye for now.